What is up, Evil Dead fans? Before I get started, I want to say sorry for the really crappy lighting. I have no idea what's going on in the shop right now. This video is pertaining on how to build the top handle for either Army of Darkness, Ash vs. Evil Dead, or Evil Dead 2, just all the chainsaw hands in general. The wood part basically is what I'll be talking about on how to actually make that without having to use a lot of power tools or actually drilling into the metal handle. The most hardcore power tool you're going to need is a Dremel with a little cutting blade on it and a drill with drill bits. That's it. It's really simple to do. It's kind of tedious, but the final result is really, really nice. But before I get started, a couple things I want to talk about. My good friend Joe Rylette out of Canada, he sent me a crayon the other day because I made that video where I bit into a crayon. And I will meet him in Chicago August 2nd through the 4th. And if he brings crayons down there, yes, I'll bite into a crayon with you, Joe. And he always likes to have a beer when he watches my videos, so I'm having a beer with you, my friend. I know a lot of people give me crap about drinking Keystone. If you don't like Keystone, it's whatever. I would never make fun of anybody for what they drink, even though it could be somebody who likes, let's say they like Miller Lite or they like a nice sea breeze in the morning. Something like that. You never know. I would never do that because that's a bullshit thing to do. Anyways, but cheers, Joe. This one's to you. And before I get really started with the build and all the details on that, I want to say something. Nick Valenza. Now, Nick Valenza, if you don't know who he is Nick's Mart, and we've talked back and forth as of late, the last few months, and he is just a genuine guy. And I have poked him in the past in old videos just to see if he would actually notice that, and he did. And I have a lot of respect for Nick. And Nick made a video, and I think I've talked about this before, where it was a how to build a chainsaw. It was like a 3 to 5 minute or 3 to 8 minute video, you know, basically on how to build a chainsaw. Nothing in the super detail, but he did that. And I will always give credit where credit is due. Without that video, Nick, without that video that you did, I would never be where I'm at now. Because you were the only resource that I could find that was worth a shit. There's other people who had blogs and stuff, but that one video you did is what started me. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for being a pioneer in the chainsaw building business, and helping a lot of people along their way, including myself. So I owe a lot, or a ton, either way, to you in that video. So I have a lot of respect for you, Nick. And Joe, Nick and Joe, this drink is for you. All right, so, and also to Master of Laughter 2.0, I know he will be in Chicago, and I want to let him know that if the chainsaws I'm bringing aren't all sold by that time, I know he can't afford one, but if he wants to wear one and take photos with it and see him in person and all that stuff, I am okay with that. Just when he sees me down there, just let me know. And I'll say, okay, yeah, here's one of the chainsaws. You want to take some photos and whatnot. So I have no problem with that. Al right now, or Gothman, as you may know him, he's going to send me a lot of stuff to give out to the Knights of Samaria members down in Chicago as well. So be prepared for that. If you're on the Knights of Samaria page, you got to come find me, and I will have basically a bunch of goodies for everybody. So while supplies last, of course. So I just wanted to say that, you know, shout out to Joe, shout out to Nick Valenza, and if you guys need certain parts for chainsaws, like if you're having problems with the tops, the only person right now selling tops is Nick Valenza on Etsy. Definitely check him out, Nick's Mart, and other different things like that. So guys, I'm rambling on like a turd, just rambling, and my lips are so dry. My allergies are just killing me. So, and when I put this on, just looks so sexy. Anyways, ooh, that was awesome. Anyways, I'm gonna get to the building so you guys can make a top handle for Army of Darkness, Ash vs. Evil Dead, or Evil Dead 2 without having to break the bank on parts or tools. So let's get right to it. Okay, so what we're looking at right now are two reject pieces that I have. I would have done a full one while I was doing it, but I'm kind of on a timeline, so I couldn't do it as I went. And at the same time, don't mind my workstation because it is a freaking mess. So now you got your wood split. And remember, when you split it, you don't have to be 100% perfect with it. Just because if you reference back to the auction photos, none of the handles were 100% split evenly. Sometimes you'll see a smaller side on one side and a thicker on the other. You just want to be close. You just want to be close. And when you split it, remember the easiest way to split it is using a table saw. You can do it by hand. It sucks. I've done it before. You can use the chop saw. The best thing to do is to make a jig or something where it lines it up perfectly flat when you chop it. So there's different methods to do this. Just make sure you have a lot of 1-inch dowel. You can get it at any craft store or hardware store. And sometimes they have different styles of wood, you know, darker woods, lighter woods, things like that. So here we are, we have this, it's split. And we want to make sure it's even across. And now the next thing that we want to do is we want to bevel this. We want to give that nice angled edge. Now you can chop them or cut them, but you're running the risk of splintering or miscutting. So what I do, I'm going to bring you over to this side of the station. This is another reject piece here. Notice it's a different style of wood as well. What I do is I wrap it up in tape, preferably a thicker tape that can be removed very easily, and I put it in a vise. The reason why I put the tape on there is I don't want it to mar the wood up. So it will create more sanding, more problems, more dents. So what I do to get that nice beveled edge is I use a sanding block. Now this is 40 grit sandpaper. You want a sticky back. Usually automotive departments have this, even hardware stores have this kind of sandpaper. Do not go cheap on your sandpaper. Don't go to Harbor Freight and buy sandpaper because it sucks. So I put it in the vise and make sure it's level, and you'll still get your nice edge. And then what you want to do is you want to sand like this at an angle and keep it nice and straight. Now once you start getting towards the edge here, you want to check the sides to make sure that your angle is correct, that it's not oblong or anything like that. But with the board, you will actually get a nice bevel. So that's what I do, and then I turn it around the other side, then I remove the tape to make sure it's not marred up. And you do that with both pieces. So let's say you did that. Now we're getting to the time you want to work with your carriage bolts. Now, this is a carriage bolt. This is the incorrect style carriage bolt. I have used these a long time ago. I stay away from them now because they have this, factory crap on the top. You want to find the ones that are nice and, I wouldn't say flat, but just without the lettering. So what you do with your carriage bolt is you go back over to your vise and you want to put it in your vise and you want to cut off all this crap. Cut it right to that flat spot right here. You can either use an air tool or you can use a Dremel. If you use a Dremel, the best thing to use is one of these cutting blades right here. These quick disconnect pieces right here that you can buy at any hardware store. That has the Batman signal on the top. They're great to use. So you can use that if you're not, you don't want to use air tools, or you're not savvy with them, or you don't have them. This is a nice alternative to do, is to use that. And yes, I do have a can of Flex Seal here, if you're wondering. So you cut that off. You want to do 4 of them, of course, because we are not going to have nuts hanging out. Nobody likes nuts hanging out, okay? Nobody wants to see a hanging nut or nuts. Okay, now for the placement. Depending on how long your handle is, because it all really just depends on how long your metal handle is. So you already have it cut to fit your metal handle, so that part's already finished. And it's already beveled. You can do the carriage bolt thing beforehand, but I prefer to do the bevel first just to make sure my carriage bolt's not too close to the bevel line. So what I do, and this is just my standard of way of doing it, but if your handle's shorter, you might want to reconsider it, is from the edge over this way, I measure 1.5 inches, and that will be my center mark for my carriage bolts. And I do it all the way around. And then once you do that, you want to definitely make sure that you know which piece is going to be on the top, which piece is going to be on the bottom, in case one's a little funkier than the other one. And also, you want to make sure that when you mark them, you want all the dots to line up. Because when you place them on the wooden or the metal handle, you want to make sure that they're evenly across from each other. So what you do is you make your mark, then you get your electric drill or whatever drill you have, and then after you do that, excuse me, somebody just popped up on my phone. What you do after that is you pilot hole into the wood. Do all of them at the same time. Make sure that all the pilots line up. Make sure you're going down flat, because if you angle it, it will screw it up and it'll be either wobbly over here or wonky on this side here. You want it to be nice and straight down. Once you got a pilot hole done, the next thing you want to do is, before I get to the next step, this carriage bolt is a little too wide. See how it's way too wide for that piece of wood and would really take up a lot of space here. I'm not sure on the size of the head, but it's pretty close to this bit right here. A 5/8 inch wood bit. So when you got your pilot hole in there, you drill down with this to the nice depth. You do not go all the way through. Please do not do that. You will actually screw up everything, because your top of your carriage bolt is going to have to sit on something, not on the metal. It'll be sunken way too far. So you drill down a little bit, you take your top piece of your carriage bolt, you sit it in there, see if that's correct on the depth. And you do that all the way around. Now, the next thing is, once you've got all that drilled out and you're happy with it, sometimes when you have it drilled out, you may have to put a hole all the way through. Your pilot hole can go all the way through. Sometimes you have to widen up your pilot hole, because sometimes, depending on your thickness here, this block may have to sit inside a hole, so you may have to drill it out just a little more. But you want your edges to definitely, at least your edges, to sit on the wood. So what you do is, now you have to actually put these tops into the wood. What you want to use, do not use Gorilla Glue, the old school Gorilla Glue, because it foams up and it will come up around it and will start to push that piece out, the head of this out. You want to use a nice gel glue, something super strong like a Loctite Ultra Gel Glue. Gorilla Glue does make one like that too. Just make sure it's an impact resistant glue, preferably clear, so you can get a nice look. So you want to make sure that each carriage bolt that you have, it sits where it's supposed to sit. You may have one carriage bolt that won't fit in a hole up here, but will fit down here. Things like that. Make sure they're going to be in their own designated hole. Make sure you have that where it needs to be. So you do that, you let it sit until it dries. After that, what you do is, you got your handle here. This is my finished handle. Now what I do is, I sometimes use Gorilla Glue with this, old school Gorilla Glue, or 2-part epoxy. Just an impact resistant glue. And you got to remember, the handle's going to be rigid. There's no flex, so there's no worry of this popping off. Trust me, it will not come off. If there was flex, yeah, I would worry a little bit of cracking, things like that, but there is no flex in this handle. If your handle has flex, you have a problem and you're using the wrong kind of metal. So what you do is you get a 2-part epoxy and or a impact resistant gel glue. Do not go with just a regular super glue that's just wet, because it'll just flop around everywhere. Before you install it, you want to sand down, not sand down, but scuff your metal where it's going to be sitting in, where it's going to sit. You remember which one is your top piece. And the best way to remember that is to get a marker or something and write T for top and an arrow pointing to the front so you know exactly where it should be placed. So what I do is I place my top one on first, and I use little bitty clamps, which I don't have any. Well, yeah, they're sitting right here. What am I doing? Little bitty clamps right here, and I'll clamp one over here, another one staggered over here, another one in the middle. And I want to make sure it's in the right placement, nice and even, because once it's there, it's going to be there. Now, if you use the old school Gorilla Glue when you do this, it will foam up. Trust me, it will. But at the same time, you can sand it down. The only time I suggest not to do that is if you do your finish prior. If you do your finish prior, you want to use a non-foaming glue, like a nice 2-part epoxy or a ultra gel glue, like Loctite makes. Something like that, something that's super, super tight. That's a nice tight bond. Now, depending on your glue, your set time is going to be different. Once it's done, you do the other side. If you use a 2-part epoxy, a lot of times it takes a good 8 to 12 hours to set. And notice right here, you can see some little edges of where some glue was at. When I do final paint and grit on here, that will all be filled in, and you won't see that. It's just nice and clean. I wanted to do this video first before I actually get to doing that. So you do the same thing with the bottom one. Of course, you want one labeled, it says B, with the arrow pointing to the front, so you know which way it should be, because you want these to line up. So once that's done, it's nice and set. It should be pretty much done. One thing you can do for a suggestion is you definitely want to round down these edges just slightly. Not a whole heck of a lot, just slightly. And when you do your stain, you can do that prior. I've done it prior, and I've done it later. This one I did later because I used the Gorilla Glue for it. Just make sure you scuff up your metal when you apply either side. Now, if you're doing Ash vs. Evil Dead, for the stain, you want a nice golden oak. It's a lighter wood color versus like Evil Dead 2. If you're doing like Evil Dead 2, you want to go with more of a darker English chestnut. And depending on the kind of wood you're using, that may change the tone of the color of the stain. Some wood, this would make it look super dark, some it'll make it look super light, and apply it however you want it. So once you've done that, you let your stain set, whether it's on here or not. If you're doing Ash vs. Evil Dead, you want a nice clear coat. And you can see it's nice and shiny, but it's not super shiny. But I do use a gloss paint, or gloss enamel clear coat. So I spray it on there. Now if you do the staining and everything prior to installing this, definitely don't have these installed yet. Just have everything drilled out for that. Just have it prepared for this to be installed, the carriage bolts. So you can do it before or after. So basically, that's it. That's really all there is to it. One suggestion, one thing I want to note is, let's say you have one wonky carriage bolt hole. One's just a little bit off. Now, if you're doing Ash vs. Evil Dead, you want that to be in the back or the bottom. See, these ones are good all the way around. But if you have one that's just a little off to the side or something, the tape is going to cover it up. So you don't have to you don't have to worry about looking like Frog Eyes or something weird like that. You can add black paint around the edges, as much wear as you want. When it comes to Evil Dead 2, you want to wear it down with some black satin paint, you know, hand paint. The stuff I usually use is this multi-surface folk art satin paint. It works very well, and I'll just brush a little on, I'll just wipe it in, and then before it dries, when you work it in, a lot of it will peel up. A lot of the black paint, either reapply, or if you like the look, it's nice and workable, either way. So once you've done that, you're done. It's nice and rigid. I've done this, I don't know how many damn times, and it's perfect. I mean, it's lined up. And with your tape, you can do it however you want. I do it like I've seen it where it's somewhat angled this way. You can have a little break here in the tape like Season 1 has on some of their chainsaws. It's just kind of up to you. And remember, like I said before, if your handle is shorter, make sure where you put these aren't too close together. If they're really close together, your handle is kind of wonky and you might want to think about redoing it. For instance, you know, you don't want it to look wonky. You can dirty it up as much as you want. If you're doing Army of Darkness, you want to use this same stuff here. You don't have to clear coat the handle on Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness has more of a different look with certain edges sanded down where the stain isn't shown. So, and I can show that at a later time of how it is different. But you'll get a nice look. There's the depth that you want. For your carriage bolts, just sticks up just a little bit. Don't sink them in too much. But yeah, that is pretty much it. And I hope this helped you guys out. I know I've been rambling for a long time. Oh, and another thing before I let you go. You see this glue right here? You see this at any store. Do not use this as a good adhesive for these things because it's more of a rubbery glue. It's good for other applications, but not for this one. So guys and girls, and ladies and gentlemen, and what's his damn name? Phil. Hey, Phil. And Phil, you guys stay groovy and have a great day. And until next time, or you see me in Chicago, let's get together and chat some more about Evil Dead stuff or anything you guys want to see me build or questions about future builds, anything like that. But guys, like always, you stay groovy.